Hello, this is Brian Cochran, and I'm going to be talking today. This is primarily, I'm a business consultant and marketing consultant, and as well as a bunch of other things. Which that's I've been in the entertainment industry since 1975 full time. I've worked with artists on the production side primarily. I've produced artists. I've also managed a couple artists through the years as well, and I used to own a small chain at three music stores back in the early 90s. And so, in the process of that, so I've learned on the retail side how the music business work and entertainment business work. I worked on the production side by producing events, and then I've worked with artists because I've managed artists. And being around the industry, I've seen what it's done and what it hasn't done for folks. So, um, when I had my music stores, I'll start on this side and go back to what I'm going to say. What I'm going to say. When I was on the retail side, when Napster came out, back in the mid '90s, I saw the end of the music business, or the mid '90s, excuse me. I saw the end of the music business. Saw that when the digital downloads came, my stores we primarily sold records, tapes, CDs, DJ equipment, and then hip hop clothing and rave clothing. And so on the music side, I saw it as the end because if you could download the music for free, that changed the whole industry. So I started looking for how to get online and start selling music online. But then when I saw how the distribution was still controlled by the major labels and major industry, that the industry was closed. I did a video several years ago called "The Music Business is a Legal Form of Sharecropping." What do you mean that, Brian? I'm glad you asked. Well, the reason a person would join into the music industry, the reason a person would join and be a part of a major label or even independent label is because they bring the expertise, they have the financing, and they have the distribution and sales model. So most artists come in as an artist. They have a gift of singing, have a gift of playing. They want to take it and bring it to the world and become a superstar. And so they sign with a major label. So they have access to what major labels have. But because, as I said earlier, it's a form of sharecropping, meaning that you got your money from the label, you got your management from the label, you got your distribution from the label, you got your cars from the label. Everything you got was from the label. And then what the label did was called something called recoupable. So before you, as an artist, would make some money, you would first pay back. They would always give you an advance. The advance would be X amount of dollars based upon how they valued you. And then, so if it was $1 million, so before you made a penny extra, you would pay back the $1 million. And then the cost of production, the cost of housing, the cost of doing business as a whole, they would deduct that from whatever you made. So if you made, in the way, because it's legal sharecropping and because most of us don't understand how to read a contract or get a hire a entertainment attorney that represents you, not one that they. And what would happen is in most cases, hey, I got an attorney. You can't afford an attorney. I got one for you. Well, that attorney was in their pocket, so of course they're gonna do the contract based upon the favor of the record label. And so it's just like back in the day with sharecropping that because most of this, ex-slaves, former slaves could not read or write, they trusted the they trusted the farmer or the person that owned the property and say, okay, look, um, I trust you, massa. Still calling him massa, excuse me, but just for the sake of our conversation. And so he will loan him the seed, he will loan him the land, he will loan him the water. He'll also rent him housing because in most cases, when they're emancipated, they didn't have none of those things. They didn't have any savings, they didn't have any money, they didn't have any support. They just had the knowledge because they were working on the farms as slaves before. They had the knowledge of how to um, grow crops. It was grow crops or work with animals, whatever. It doesn't matter. So it's still the same thing. So you get it. So you get the parallel. So without going in more detail. So when it came time to reconcile in sharecropping, guess what? Because they couldn't read and write, they trusted Massa because Massa loved on them, and now they're free, and I'm giving them an opportunity. You are beholden to the slave owner. Excuse me, the owner of the the owner of the landowner, and the one that was giving you the opportunity that you thought was an opportunity was actually keeping indentured. So it's a formal way, is it's an informal way, but formal way of um the sharecropper, I mean the farm owner still keep you enslaved because by the time they reconcile the books, because you couldn't read and write, it was improper. And so they'd always take advantage of you because taking advantage of your ignorance. So let's come forward. So it's the same thing in what I said earlier with the music industry that is set up to get you because you're ignorant, because you have need of the money, you want the money, and they're big daddy and you want to be like big daddy, or you want the opportunity to make as much money as you can. You want to sign with a major label because of the extra, all the things I shared with you earlier without repeating myself again. So my friend, so in knowing that, I'm giving the foundation of why I said the music business is broken. So the whole business, that's why you see just like in the music movies industry, it's called, the casting couch was the same kind of couch. So you would have to sell your soul in order to become a megastar. So if you look at where the music is today, there's always three or four people that are going to be stars that they're allowed to make a ton of money. So that way it baits you to think that you two could do the same, but it's not just set up for you. But the majority of them are not doing that because it is set up to get you. And once they get the hooks into you, then it's almost impossible to get out because when you get into these contracts, when you sign, I'm going to share, for instance, this is going to be a long one. So if you don't mind, I'm going to kind of bounce around a little bit to come forward to my conversation with my friend, which I also share with him these things I'm sharing with you. So I managed a group one time that they were called The Look back in the day, and they had a 12-inch. And at that time, I had a music store. And so I was I was a Billboard reporter. At that time, there was a magazine which is still out, but it's digital, called Billboard Magazine. So back in the day, Billboard Magazine was a global magazine that we, as a Billboard reporter, report the top 10 or 20 songs of each category, and then report those songs, and then that information would be sent back to Billboard. Now that I got a ton of perks out of because of being a Billboard reporting store, so your Snoop Dogs and all these different people that were in town that lived out here would come to my store, and so I got some perks out of it, but at the same time to use, so anyway, I don't get sidetracked with that. Um, so I had clout, and so I got to learn the business through that. So let me come forward. So because I this group called Z Look came into my store, and he was trying to get it, they were trying to get us to report, first off, get me as a DJ to play their songs in some of my events, play the songs in our store, and then report, also at the same time report to Billboard, as one of my hot songs of the week, kind of thing. And so in the process of that, I listened to the song, and the tracking was off. And if you're in the technical side, you know what I'm saying. So the tracking was off in the song. So I said, look, as a DJ, I can't play the song because the tracking's off. And so you need to go back. I don't know how many copies of the song, because back then it was 12 inches. So they were, starting around. And back in the very beginning, it's 45s, and now it's 12 inches. So us as DJs, we wouldn't play 45s. We'll play 12 inches as a club DJ, mobile DJ, wedding DJ, whatever. So they went back and went back to the mastering guy who mastered it, yelled at him because the tracking was off. And so because I helped them with that, they were able, with no extra cost, have them remaster it to get the tracking right. So tracking is right. They come back, they thank me. And in the process of that, they asked me would I mind managing them because they didn't know what to do. So I'm going to say, oh, I'm not a manager. But because at that time I was also working, I was doing the mix show for KGLH, and so because of that, I knew all the local promoters because I was working at half the clubs in LA and all over Orange County, Inland Empire, whatever. I was, excuse expression, local celebrity, whatever. So anyway, so I knew a lot of people, and with that, I knew all the promoters because the promoters were hiring me to come in to DJ a night at their event or whatever, so that way they can get the exposure that I have being on KGLH. And Frankie Ross was my friend back at the time. Matter of fact, I did the show with Frankie. He was the one that was the radio host, and I was the DJ. And so I would get to talk, but I mainly DJ for the most part. So anyway, so I said, well, hey, I can do what I can. I'm not a manager, but I can do what I can. Again, I'm telling you all this that way you know my expertise and why I can say what I'm saying and why I know what I know. So I said, well, I know some promoters, I know some DJs now that you got it whacked. So I can get you played and I can get you into some clubs that you can do, a showcase kind of thing. And so get you exposed and sell some 12 inches and get some exposure. Well, we blew them up here in Southern California. and we blew them up enough where they got an offer to sign with Orpheus, which is a subsidiary of Capital back at the time. They're no longer in business. Capital is, but Orpheus isn't. And so again, my goal wasn't to be their manager forever, but they came in and said, "Hey," goes back to what I said earlier about how the record industry, the business of the record industry, and how they pimp people. So they said, "Look, you know, they want to sign us. So that's wonderful, fantastic, but it comes with a caveat that we don't, they don't want media management. They have a management company that has more expertise, has been in the business longer, and they can get them farther and help them to get to the next level." And I didn't want to stop them because again, I wasn't trying to be a manager. I wanted to help them, but at the same time, um, my understanding of the business, I knew then it was it was going to be a challenge for them, and I wanted them to stay independent, but they wanted to sign because they wanted to be the next radio for the world. They wanted to be the next time. Because back then in the '90s, that's they were coming around at that time, so the sound was similar to that. And so anyway, so they end up going ahead and signing with them, and they asked me what my thought was. I said, "Look, you need to get a different attorney, and this is why, because I knew enough about business because I was still a business and marketing consultant." And so I said, "Look," um, they said they wanted us to change our name. They were called The Look. They wanted to change their name to Z Look. They also wanted them to sign under their publishing company, and they wanted to give them some money to sign with them. Which again, that's the bait. And I said, "Look, if you do that, and when you do that, you lose your identity and you lose your company and you lose your name." They go, "No, no, they got us." I said, "Nope, I'm telling you that because the way the industry, because of being in the business and having a retail store and doing the things that I do, I know because the industry it's a big industry, but it's a small industry, and we know people that have gone through the same thing that they were going through because that's how the system is." So I couldn't stop them because one, I didn't have a contract with them, didn't want a contract with them because again, my goal wasn't to sign them to a management contract when I was doing my own thing and I had my own business and my own dreams, my own aspirations. One of it wasn't being to be a tour manager or a full business manager at the time because that wasn't my desire to do. So anyway, they end up signing with them. Longer story, a little bit shorter. They signed with Orpheus, and they took they changed their name to one. They they had a LLC. No, they didn't have LLCs yet. No, they weren't even incorporated yet. They had a sole proprietorship. They didn't have a corporation. They didn't have back then corporations were a whole different animal than the way it is today. So they didn't know to incorporate, so they didn't incorporate. So they were a sole proprietors. They got a DBA for their name, which protected them locally in the county that they were in, and I didn't have that back then. I didn't know what corporations, the value of corporations to now is. So I couldn't tell them to get incorporated because I didn't know. Because even back then, I was a DBA. So I'm never learning. Praise God for that. So anyway, so in signing the deal, they changed the name from The Look to Z Look. So all the promotion and marketing that we didn't matter because they're going to take them global. They said, "Well, they're going to take us global." They thought the name Z Look was better than The Look, and then they had them change their publishing company and go back and record the songs in their studios with, even though they were producers, they still had their producers do some of the production because they figured they can control that. And then they went through their marketing company, the rest of the story. So what ended up happening was they released it, they got the project finished, and the album was only going to be released and promoted due to um their keystone artist of the Who's Gonna label, which was Melba Moore. Well, Melba Moore back then was a one-hit wonder, and them trying to revitalize her career was too late. There's too many other singers out, Karen White's and all the other folks that were out back then that just that can sing the house down and younger that they were out that she was no way that she was going to compete with them. So they end up shelved them. So then they contractually they had to sign the label. I mean, they had to release the album. They had to put it out because that's what the contract said. So what they did was they did what they call shelved, which I mentioned a second ago. A shelving is that they went on and produced the album, they pressed the album, they released the album, but they put it on the shelf. They put it on the back burner so that way all the money, time, and interest went into Melba Moore versus going into them, even though they signed with them and promised them the world, but put them on the shelf. And they had a 2-album deal, and both the albums were shelved because Melba Moore never took off. It didn't do anywhere close to what they thought it was gonna do. So they didn't have the budget because they put all the money into Melba Moore, except for the advance money. And then what they end up doing, which is kind of ironic and kind of sad, and it's at the same time, is that they signed him to a production deal. And on their production deal, they're writing for Melba Moore songs, for more songs for Melba Moore, and songs for some of the other artists they signed on their label. So they end up now, doing production and never becoming the artists that they could have been because they were great. They were great artists, great musicians. They wrote all their own songs, produced their own songs, but because of the way the music industry worked, they got done. And so I shared that with my friend coming forward. And that was the first story I told him. I said, look, the challenge with signing with a label is ABC 1, 2, 3. So he says, yeah, I got this young lady that she's a rap. Again, this is a long story. If you want to tune out, great. If not, please listen, because if you're in the music business as well as in business, that's another part of a conversation for another day. But in this conversation, I want to be able to just tie this in on the music side, and then I'll do another one for the business side another time. So he says, yeah, I got this young lady. She's in her late 20s. She's cute, and she's got a song out, several songs out that's on TikTok and on Instagram, and I think she got a couple of videos on YouTube. And I want to manage her. And I go, you want to manage her? He's not, he's never managed a group before. He doesn't know. He knows less than I do. And so I said, how are you going to manage her? He says, well, that's why I'm calling you, because you can help me. I'm like, well, but I'm not, I don't believe in going to major labels. I don't believe in that. And I'll tell you what I do believe in a minute, but just kind of walk with me and stay with me, please, until the end. And so in the process of that, I said, look, this is the problem. And I shared with him about sharecropping. I shared with him about all the different artists. And I also shared with him about Prince. Prince had on his face slave, because he learned that the music industry is you're indentured servant. You're in slavery. And he understood that, and several artists understood the same thing. So they ended up going independent. So I said, so why would you put her with the wolves and she's a sheep? And he's like, well, because she wants to, I said, well, and then he told me, yeah, what's the name? Oh God, what's the guy's name? He's a reality star, and he's independent, I guess, sort of. He's in the music business, sort of. His name will come to me. Anyway, he said, matter of fact, he's the one that married, he's a Muslim, and he has a second wife with some reality girl. I can't think of her name either, because again, it doesn't matter. But anyway, Yates. Anyway, that guy. Anyway, that he wants to sign, he wants to sign her. He wants to give her $100,000, as an advance. And I go, look, one, who has he promoted? Who has he out there besides himself? The only reason why he's doing half the stuff that he's doing is because he's part of the reality side of the business, not the music business. So what does he really know about the music business to help her? And two, he's going to make her his third wife. He's going to make her his third wife. So yeah, he'll bait her with some money. And again, the casting couch thing, if you really want to be successful, then be my wife. I'm clowning, but and that's allegedly, it's not, I'm only sharing from my perspective of knowing the lack of character of that guy, and seeing just from the reality TV and seeing the stuff on what on YouTube, that he's not a person of great moral character. I'll say it like that. He has a challenge in his character, and he's a part of the system. So in the process of that, she had signed with somebody else before she met my friend, and they got the social media. So she handed over. She had massed, I think, 1 million people on TikTok or something like that, and almost that on Instagram. And I don't know her name, so it doesn't matter, because it's not about her personally. It's about the business as a whole. And so, I said, don't do it. Please don't do it. And I'll share with him why. Stay independent. I share with him why you need to stay independent and how to stay independent. And then so he didn't listen. Well, he somewhat listened to me. And then he calls me today, and I say, hey, are you sure if it's okay if I can share this information? Because, I want to help people, not just you, but help other people. I'm not charging you for my consulting today. I won't charge you if I can use your story and use what you're doing so that way it can help other people, help other musicians like her and people like you that don't know the business. And the business has changed. The business is dead, because of music stores are gone. Downloads are the only thing that's available. Streaming is the only way that's available. And if you do sign with a major record, like with a major record, it's called, they give you a 360 deal. What is that? I'm glad you asked. A 360 deal is where you sign with a label. Before 360 deals, it would be the record labels would make their money on the sales of the records, and they would make their money on your merchandise. But if you did movies, if you did TV, if you did your own concerts, or you went on tour, the record label wouldn't get any of that money. But what happened was once the labels found out how much money or saw how much money artists were making, they changed the deal and said, now we want 360 of you. We want everything that you make. We want it all. Everything that you do, we want it all. And so those are the deals they're offering now, period. There's no other deals that I know of. Very few, if anything, other than that, because unless you've had 10 billion followers and you're making a ton of money, that you might get a deal that doesn't include something. But in most cases, they want 360 because they realize they left money on the table, and they ever want to leave money on the table. So in the process of that, he called me today and he says, "Hey, guess what? Chris Brown wants to sign her." I go, "Who?" He says, "Yeah, man, Chris Brown wants to sign her to a deal to do da 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 da." I'm like going, "Okay, so what's the difference between Chris Brown and Kevin Yates? What's the difference? They're both in the same kind of guys. Same kind of guys." And Chris Brown, he says, "Well, he's got a label." And so name me one person on his label that is doing better than him or even close to him. Name me one artist on his label. And of course he couldn't do it, because one, he's an older guy like me. Matter of fact, he's older than I am. And so he shouldn't be trying to manage her anyway, which is what I told him as well. So I said, well, first off, he's part of the old system. He grew up in this system. So he's not trying to go against what he's been embedded in, how he got into the business as well. So that's all he knows. He's not going to do it the fair way. He's not going to do it the way that is equitable, meaning for both of them, that everybody wins. He has to win because that's the way the system is set up. So I said, look, same thing I said about Kevin Yates. What does he bring to the table besides a little bit of money? Well, he can get her out there. I says, yeah, but he's, excuse what I'm going to say, and this is allegedly because I've never been in the room with him, but it appears based upon what's been said, he's a whoremonger. So that means that you're going to put, he's a wolf and she's a sheep. You're going to put her with the wolves so you can make your commission as a manager. He says, well, I got plans for her. I said, yeah, but the problem is you having plans for her in a year means that he has access to her for a year. That eventually, if she doesn't sleep with them, that eventually she will, because in order to keep the money, in order to keep going forward, that's part of the deal. It's an unwritten rule in the deal with major labels. That's why you're finding, with the guy that's in prison right now and Suge Knight and all these other folks, that are in the industry, the whole deal, because that's what it's all about. There's this movie called Eyes Wide Open, and it's kind of cool. It's, with, I can't think of the lady's name. Anyway, in that movie, they were having this secret society where they have these secret meetings. And if, you can die if you reveal what's going on in these meetings. These meetings where there were orgies, huge orgies, similar to what Diddy's doing, had been doing before he went to jail. And the same thing with the guy Epstein, same thing. The music industry, the movie industry, they're all intended because they all work together because it's all owned by the enemy, all owned by Satan, controlled by the world, controlled by his gosh. Let me stop. Okay, let me stop to that because I'm about to go off. Let me get back on track of what I talked with him about. So I said, look, and why I'm doing the video that I'm doing today. That's the business side as well as the music side. So I said, look, in today's climate, you need to build her a business. There's no way that she should ever sign with a major record label unless she's willing to sleep with whoever, however, and do whatever they want. And that's not you as a man of God, you as a elder, he's in his mid 70s. You don't want to get rich or you don't want to make money off of putting somebody else out there. It's a legal form of prostitution, and that's what's part of the game. That's unfortunate, but that's part of the game. And so I said, look, this is what if since you're calling me and you're asking me, I'm going to give you the formula, which I'm giving it to you today, the formula of how to make money if you want to be in the entertainment industry as a whole. That's be movies, TV, as well as the music business. This is the formula. You ready? Okay. You need to start your own company. What do you mean? Yes, I mean you need to get yourself a S corporation, not a C, but get yourself a S corporation. And why you want to get an S corporation? Glad you asked. And what is it? So, what's the difference? Excuse me, I'm stumbling. You get yourself an S corporation, so that way it allows you to raise capital at different levels and eventually go public if you want to or if you need to. But it allows you to raise capital based upon the value of the company. And then that way you can raise money to do what the major labels do. The only difference between you and a major label or even McDonald's is they're a corporation. So being a corporation, they have the flexibility to be able to go raise capital by doing a couple different things. One, by selling stock, and two, by building up what is called a FICO score. So a FICO score is what a Paydex score. Oh, I'm so sorry. A Paydex score, and a Paydex score is what is for business, and FICO score is what's for personal credit. So you build up your trade lines on the business side, just like you build up your trade lines on the personal side, and based upon your Paydex score, which is an 80 score, 70 to 80, just like it's 800 is perfect score, 800 plus is perfect on the personal side. 80 is on the business side. And so there's ways of building your credit on the business side. There's a company called Dun and Bradstreet, and now it's Experian as well. They're the ones that are the gatekeepers on your credit. So yes, you can build your credit on your own, but you fast track it, and 99% of your lenders look at what your Paydex score through Dun and Bradstreet, and Dun and Bradstreet is the one that compiles your information. Just like on the personal side is Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian are the three that are for the personal side. Dun and Bradstreet is one on, and now Experian on the business side. Experian or yeah, it's Experian. And so you would build up your score, and based upon you building up your score, if you have an 80 score, you can go to a bank. And most banks, depending on what you can do some research on. There's banks out there that based on your Paydex score only, you can get funding. Or there's a couple of different ways of getting funding. Either you can use a lot of them if you're just getting started. There's a whole. I'm not going to get in that today. That'd be for another lesson for another day of how to build up a Paydex score. We'll go into another time. But I told him, look, you need to get and I went too farther than I should have. You need to get a corporation, get shares in a corporation. So that way, if you help her build it in the long term, you'll be able to have some value that you've added, that you're adding value and helping her build a business, and you get dividends on the money that's raised when when she does it. And I said, so, and I said, if I were you, I would do that first and foremost. And then if a company comes at you, then you sell them stock in your company, or they buy out the company, and then they retain her as an employee of the company. And so that way, and she keeps her stock and stock options, and then she sells part of the company. So that way she controls 51%, never give up more than majority. And I'm giving this as extra, but I'm going to say it anyway, that she contains majority. So that way she contains whoever controls the company controls the company. So whoever has 51% of the stock controls the company. They have the voting stock to be able to take the direction of the company, so on and so forth. But I'll stop there because I don't want to go. I'm going to go more on the business side another time, because I want you to know that this is why you want to do that, so that way you can raise your own money. When you raise your own money, you can turn your fans into customers, customers into fans. That's our slogan for our music division. I'm Music Boss, and we want to help people to take their fans, turn them into customers, customers into fans, and so that way, the fans come to the concerts, the customer, the fans, the fans become, they'll go to your, that's why I said, look, you book your own shows, you control your own destiny, you do your own distribution. Don't put it in all the distribution outlets. Don't put it out there because they're not paying artists. That's why that's why these people are. That's why a lot of your major artists have left. They use the major artists to get them in to get to get everybody to sign up on the streaming platforms. But then when they didn't get paid, most of them left. But now they're so big it doesn't matter. They don't need them because they have too many other artists that they can pimp. Oops, excuse me. Did I say that? That they can take advantage of and not pay them their royalties that they're due by them streaming their songs and their intellectual property. So I'm saying this to say, there's no need to sign with a major record label if you learn to do business. You're in the business of making music and you happen to be an artist, to use your artistry to, to build your business model, to build your business for you to make the money, not to become a zillionaire, because a zillionaire or billionaire, it's, you can do it, but there's a formula behind doing it. But in most cases, you got to compromise in order to do it. I'm not saying it's impossible not to compromise, but it's harder to do it because the system is set up against you. So I told him what I just shared with you, and I'm sharing this with you now so that we understand that there's a way that seems right, because that's what we're programmed to do. Because all the propaganda out there that is telling us that we sign on a major label, they can help us, they can help us, they can help us, but the ones that, there's a guy, and I'm gonna close with, I'm gonna stop with this. I forgot his name already. He was murdered a couple years ago. He was out of LA, South Central, or they say South LA, but I'm gonna say South Central. Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue. Oh gosh, I can't think of his name. Anyway, what he did was he saw the game. He saw that where folks were taking advantage, even your black owned hip hop labels and labels that were independents were doing the same model because that's all they knew. And so Nipsey, there we go. I said, look, study him, see what he did as an independent. And he was very well off, did very, very well as an independent. He didn't have to sell his soul. His only downside was he couldn't get out of the game. And so the game was in him, but the business practices that he had and how he did it and how he positioned himself by building those fans and turning them into customers, not sending them to the streaming formats. He was doing private, webcasts and doing private events, and people would pay. If you bought the tickets to this, you would get a download, or if you bought the tickets to this, or if you bought this, you would get his, and he would produce different products that he came out with, that because he had valued customers that were first fans and turned them into customers, that they will follow him when he did his private shows. He's able to, almost like what Prince did. Prince, that's why, again, going back to why Prince did Slave, he had Slave on, on his face because he learned the game was against him. So he went independent. He tried to get all it took him years to get his licensing back, all his publishing back. He didn't get them all. But while he was there, he learned. So he did his own concerts, he did his own tours, he produced his own music. He didn't care about selling 10 million copies. He knew that if he could sell 100,000 copies, he'd make a decent living. Or if it moved into a million copies, great. But he wasn't worried about it because, one, he was an artist more than anything else. So that's it for today. I wanted to share with you that, because I think it's important that if you're in the music business, that the music business is dead forever the way it is. If you build your own business, then you're able to build your own destiny because you're in control. And then you surround yourself of people that know more than you. And that's the key to your success, is that if you don't hire a person in the music business, get a consultant that knows business, can help you structure your business and help you set up your corporation, help you set up your marketing, help you set up everything for you. And then you hire a tour manager, or you just have these different divisions based upon how you set up your company, that you're able to be as big as you want to be, based upon the same thing that the record labels have, your major labels have. You can do the same, but just doing it in a smaller fashion and grow to something that's great when you choose to. But you can stay small and stay rich and make a living. I think most of us, we have those desires to be billionaires, but if you can make, a decent $100,000 a year, I'm in Southern California, you can still live okay on $100,000 a year. We're surviving. We're doing great at $100,000 a year. So don't try to be a millionaire. Where a millionaire, you can take it, and if you there's a Bible scripture that says, if you're faithful over the few, He'll make you ruler over many. So if you're faithful over the little, and you take that little and build it, you can become national or you can become global. Because if you master the small, of knowing how to blow up right here, then you can set up affiliate programs. You can set up a whole bunch of different things to help you go global, because then you can get other people to help you sell. You can get other promoters in different states to say, okay, or different internet radio stations or TV broadcasts or whatever, help you by you partnering with them in that area to blow you up in that area. And I'll stop there because that's a whole nother conversation. But I just want to share with you that the business model is dead, that you don't need them, that if you build the business and build it the right way and have a great foundation, you could be as big as you want to be. This is Brian Cochran, and I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope something's been said that will help you to understand that you don't have to sell out to be great. Just be great, because